Hello everyone and welcome to my The Bold Fans channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. The half-empty bottle of whiskey on the desk caught the late afternoon sun as Carter Walton stood by himself in the empty CEO office of Forrester Creations. He hardly noticed that Los Angeles extended toward the ocean outside the floor-to-ceiling windows in a mist of smog and gold. The image of Daphne placing her wedding ring on that exact desk only hours before. Her eyes welling with tears but her voice calm, kept coming back to him. She had said, "I can't give you what you want. A household, kids, the life we discussed." He had protested. "My body won't allow it, and every day I stay here pretending it might change is another day I steal from you." He had pled. He had assured her that if she would just keep the ring on her finger, he would follow her to Paris or the ends of the world, that love was sufficient, that they could adopt, and that science provided possibilities. With the serene patience of someone who had already made up her mind, she had listened. After giving him a cheek kiss and whispering that she would always love him, she left. The office felt too big and too silent now. Carter sipped the whiskey without tasting it after pouring another measure. It was a welcome burn. The deep ache beneath his ribs was worse than anything. The quiet was broken by a gentle knock. He remained silent. Nevertheless, the door opened. Steffy Forrester entered with a little fracture in her normally shiny armor. Her eyes were rimmed in red, her hair was loose, and she carried an expensive transparent bottle. As if gathering strength, she leaned against the door for a moment after closing it behind her. "I heard," she said plainly. Carter chuckled briefly and without humor. "You did, of course." "I just got back from Monaco," she said, crossing the room to place her bottle next to his. "News travels fast in this building. Finn didn't tell me Sheila was there." Once more. "After all of this, without notifying anyone, I departed." Carter looked at her and said, "I couldn't stay in that hotel one more night with him looking at me like I was the one who had betrayed him." Steffy has never looked more unpolished. She treated herself like a queen even during the toughest of her struggles. "The queen seems worn out tonight," he said. "Sit." Yes, she did. In silence they poured drinks. Something appeared to come free in both of them with the first taste. Did she actually go? After some time, Steffy inquired. She exited the ring. Claimed to be traveling to Paris on the next aircraft. "I said I would accompany her." "No," she replied. He gazed into his glass. "She believes that she is being good to me." Steffy's fingers gripped her own glass more tightly. "Freeing me to find someone who can give me children." "And you? What are your desires?" "I want my wife." The voice was harsh and low. "I want the life we were creating. Biological children don't matter to me. She is important to me. But she won't hear it." Steffy was silent for a considerable amount of time. Her voice was quieter than he had ever heard it when she talked. "I understand what it's like to feel the earth vanish beneath you." Carter looked at her and said, "To realize the person you trusted most has been keeping secrets that cut you open. Finn. Sheila at all times. He is still unable to fully cut her out. He claims that it has to do with history and family." She drank. "I say it's about choosing someone who has tried to destroy everything I love over the woman who is supposed to be his wife. So I went. And now I'm here in this office, drinking with you because I didn't know where else to go." Their mutual silence was heavy with things that neither of them had spoken out loud in years. Carter recalled Daphne's initial introduction to the company by Steffy, the Parisian scent specialist with the friendly grin and bright mind. He had assumed that was just smart business. At the time, he was unaware of Steffy's deeper motivations and the fact that Daphne's presence had been meticulously planned to distance him from hope and undermine the Logan Forrester power struggle that had been destroying the company. Steffy and Daphne have shared that secret for a very long time. After they truly fell in love and the plan ceased to be a strategy and turned into something neither of them could control, Daphne eventually confessed parts of it to him. At first he had been angry. Then he had made the decision to think that what developed between them was real. Indeed it had been. Up to the diagnosis. Until the desk rang. Is she aware that you are here? Steffi interrupted his thoughts by asking. Daphne. Oh. He wiped his face and said, she's gone. I'm not sure what I would say to her even if she weren't. That the only person who knows how empty this building feels tonight is the lady who previously used her as a weapon against me. Steffi's gaze wavered. I never made her fall in love with you. That was a true portion. I know, he said, meeting her eyes. You know that. However, the start wasn't tidy. They drank once more. None of this ever is. Their blood blended with the clear liquor and whiskey, softening edges and lowering barriers. As the sun sank, the office became darker. They didn't move to switch on any more lights. Eventually, Steffi stated in a distant voice, I keep thinking about what it would have been like if Finn and I had remained steadfast. If Sheila had never been born. Carter's jaw twisted. If I hadn't fought for this company for so many years like it was the only thing that could prove I was enough. And I can't stop thinking about the version of myself that thought marriage could make things better. Steffi moved closer to the couch they had somehow found up sharing, saying, if I just loved hard enough, the rest would fall into place. They touched each other's shoulders. Neither withdrew. She said, you're not alone in this. He averted his head and said, not tonight. Their faces were closer than they should have been. He could see the weariness engraved in the corners of her eyes, the little sheen of tears she had held back, and the way her lips parted slightly as though she was about to say something further but changed her mind. Steffi, don't. It was practically an appeal. Avoid analyzing it. Don't turn it into another tactic or power play. Can't we be the ones that have to win every time, just for one night? The query lingered between them. The corporation, the families, the betrayals, and the secret that had once tied Steffi and Daphne in a conspiracy and then bound Carter and Daphne in a marriage that was about to collapse all weighed heavily on Carter in that room. He experienced the loneliness, the whiskey's pull, and the sudden, acute yearning to not be the only one bearing the stillness. He put down his glass. She did too. He kissed her carelessly. It was the type of kiss that occurs when two people finally let go after holding themselves together with all of their might for too long. After reaching his face, Steffi's hands moved into his hair. The couch shifted beneath them as Carter drew her in. When someone's knee struck the table, the bottles on the desk shook, but neither of them seemed to mind. Clothes became loose. Breathing became erratic. Something personal and desperate took place against the blurry backdrop of the city lights outside. Once, a warning about Daphne's ring still resting on the desk, Finn somewhere in the city looking for his wife, and the lengthy chain of secrets that had led them all to this point tried to emerge in Carter's mind, but the heat of Steffi's mouth against his throat and the whiskey overpowered it. The thick carpet in the CEO's office was softer than they had anticipated, so they moved to the floor. The dark fabric was covered in Steffi's hair. Carter's hands traced the well-known structure of her body as though he were rediscovering something he had never permitted himself to desire. With a little sigh that was half surrender, half relief, she arched into him. It lacked the tender kind of romance. Inside the wreckage, there was only necessity and the fleeting, intense solace of not being alone. The air was cold on their feverish flesh as they lay there, entwined and silent. Carter kept one arm over her while gazing at the ceiling. He felt Steffi's cheek against his chest. Neither of them talked for several minutes. This doesn't fix anything, she said. I know, she said. Finn is going to find me. Daphne may yet give you a call. I know that too, she said, raising her head to meet his gaze. The company will keep demanding everything. Her eyes were brighter than they had been all evening in the low light. The secret will finally be revealed. Everything. How did Daphne get here? What I requested of her. How it became something neither of us had anticipated. And now this, she said, making a little weary gesture between them. People will only notice the explosion when they gaze at us. Carter's fingertips moved slowly in circles over her naked shoulder, saying, they won't care that we were both broken when it happened. Let them examine. Steffi laughed softly and a little bitterly. Tonight I needed someone who understood the particular kind of loneliness that comes with loving this family and this company and still feeling like you're standing on the outside of both. Aren't we a pair? Maybe that's why it worked for a few hours. She fell silent once again. The golden boy who tried to hold everything together, and the forester who never learned how to stop fighting long enough to keep what she had. Then she sat up, grabbing her garments with a pragmatic efficiency that never wavered, even in such dire circumstances. Carter remained motionless as he saw her getting dressed. After getting dressed again, she gazed down at him while a complex movement occurred behind her eyes. He nodded and said, "I should leave before anyone comes looking." She wasn't asked to stay by him. The borders of the night they had just entered were clear to both of them. At the door, Steffi hesitated. "Carter." "Yes. Remember that for a short while we were just two people who needed each other, regardless of what happens next. When the truth about Daphne and me and the beginning of all this finally comes to light, when Finn finds out where I spent tonight, or when the whole damn company starts talking. Not tactics. Not weapons. Just us," he said, staring at her across the dimly lit office. She walked away, saying, "I won't forget." With a gentle finality, the door clicked shut. After she left, Carter lay on the ground for a considerable amount of time. The bottle of whiskey was almost emptied. When someone passed by, Daphne's ring was still illuminated by the hallway light. The quiet explosion that had just occurred inside the glass walls of Forrester Creations was unnoticed by the city outside. He was aware that the romance, if it could be called that at all, would not remain a secret. In this world, secrets never did. Eventually, Daphne would find out that the lady who had initially put her in Carter's path had ended up in his arms the night their marriage broke down. Finn would learn that his wife had found solace in the arms of the guy whose life she had previously attempted to reorganize in order to gain control. The lengthy series of decisions that started with Steffi's strategic hiring of a Parisian scent specialist would ultimately come to a chaotic, unavoidable end. Carter, however, had not been the man torn between two women and a legacy of industrial warfare for a few stolen hours. Steffi had just been a woman who recognized that specific type of hurt, and he had just been a man who hurt. There would be an explosion. Alliances would change and old wounds would resurface as a result of the aftermath. However, Carter experienced a peculiar brittle calm in the silence that followed Steffi's departure, knowing that at least one person in this complex empire had seen him clearly on the night everything else collapsed. After a while, he got up, buttoned his shirt, and filled his glass with the remaining whiskey. The lights of Los Angeles sparkled beyond the windows like 1,000 little, far-off fires. Daphne was getting on a plane somewhere in the city. Finn was looking for his wife somewhere. Forrester Creations machinery kept running somewhere. In the CEO's office, Carter Walton silently lifted his glass to the secret that was about to blow up and to the fleeting, imperfect solace that had made the impending devastation nearly tolerable. Standing by himself in the dimly lit CEO office of Forrester Creations, Carter Walton felt the weight of the previous several weeks bearing down on him like the gloomy California night outside the floor-to-ceiling windows. In the dim light of the desk lamp, Daphne's wedding ring, which she had set on the conference table earlier that day, remained in place. He had lifted it up, flipped it 12 times in his fingers, and then put it back down. She had vanished, traveling to Paris. His marriage, which he had worked so hard to establish following the turmoil with hope, ended before it had really started. He filled the crystal glass with another measure of whiskey and drank it without tasting. The only sound in the office was the distant hum of the building systems. The door then opened. Steffi Forrester entered, her stance shaky and her eyes rimmed in red. Carrying the new wounds from yet another collapse with Finn, she had flown back from Monaco without informing anyone. Once more, Sheila's shadow had loomed over their reconciliation, and Steffi had reached her breaking point. After shutting the door, she briefly leaned against it, as though the wood could support her. At first, neither of them said anything. Carter merely made a silent proposition by holding up the bottle. Steffi went across the room, grabbed the glass he had poured for her, and downed it all in one gulp. Exhaustion and booze blunted her normally sharp edges as she slumped into the chair across from the desk. At last, Carter stated in a hoarse voice, "She's gone." "Daphne, I never should have come here," she said. "That it was a mistake to fall in love with me." Steffi gave him a serious glance, and her countenance changed. Suddenly, the rivalry that had characterized so much of their working relationship felt far away. Finn was secretive. Once more. Concerning Sheila. "I can't continue doing this," they said, their words coming out in jumbled fragments. Carter informed her about the fertility news that made Daphne feel she would never be able to give him the family they both desired, as well as the diagnosis that had destroyed her sense of self. Steffi talked about the never-ending cycle with Finn and how, despite their repeated attempts to rebuild trust, it kept breaking. The whiskey continued to pour. The darkness grew deeper. Carter eventually moved from behind the desk to sit next to her on the low sofa by the windows. Steffi leaned her head against his shoulder. Without thinking, he put his arm over her. It was primal, dangerous, and mutually comforting. The kiss that followed seemed natural when she turned to face him. It was gentle at first, almost tentative, then intensified into something desperate and urgent. In the dark, two individuals who had lost their bearings were reaching for one another. That night they didn't go any farther. They were separated by a noise in the hallway, someone from the late cleaning team. With her eyes wide with the abrupt realization of what they had almost done, Steffi fixed her garments. Carter got up and wiped his face. He said the words, "This can't happen," but they lacked conviction. Steffi nodded, but neither of them immediately went to the door. The smell of her perfume and whiskey lingered in the office when she eventually left. There was no clear resolution in the days that followed. Daphne's departure was not as final as it initially appeared. Her voice was tight with remorse and lingering love as she called from Paris. She claimed to require room, although she hadn't submitted any paperwork. Still in shock, Carter found himself making a commitment to wait and be there for her no matter what. Steffi continued to show up at Forrester at the same time. In the office, their talks became more in-depth. The design floor's shared looks took on new significance. Like a live wire, the mystery of that near night lingered between them. The complexity of the history was something that neither of them had yet completely realized. It had never been fully Daphne's decision to move to Los Angeles. Years before, Steffi had strategically brought her in as a sophisticated scent expert to divert Carter's attention from Hope and tip the scales at Forrester. Both better and worse than Steffi had anticipated, the plan had succeeded. Carter had truly captured Daphne's heart. Even though Steffi's fingerprints were on its basis, the marriage that ensued had been genuine for both of them. The original creator of the plan was now finding solace in Carter's arms as the foundation began to crumble. Without knowing where they came from, Carter started to feel the undercurrents. He thought back to little remarks Daphne had said during their previous confrontations. There were times when she seemed to know more about Forrester politics than a rookie designer ought to, including references to the plan changing. He ignored the ideas and concentrated on the agony of the moment. For her part, Steffi sensed the old guilt stirring. Once, she had turned Daphne into a weapon. She was uneasy in ways she wouldn't look into too carefully after witnessing the consequences and discovering that she was drawn to the man she had previously targeted through the same lady. When Ridge entered the CEO's office that afternoon, the tension increased. The distance between them was too close, and the stillness was too intense, even though they weren't nearly kissing. Ridge squinted. The warning was evident in the way his jaw was set, even if he didn't say anything at the moment. He drew Steffi aside later that day. He instructed her to shut down whatever this is with Carter. "You're still wed." "He is still wed," Steffi snapped. "And this company already has enough chaos without the two of you adding more. Every significant aspect of my marriage has ended. Additionally, Carter's wife abandoned him. She is still alive and in Paris." After the conversation, Steffi felt more defiant than warned. And you know better than anyone how quickly people can change their minds in this family. She went after Carter once more that night, this time at his loft. There was still evidence of Daphne's presence in the room, including a book of French poetry on the nightstand and a scarf left on a chair. Steffy observed everything without commenting. This time they drank less. The discussion became more purposeful. Carter talked about the family he and Daphne had envisioned and the void created when those plans fell through. Steffy talked about her kids and her concern that any future she had with Finn would always be tainted by her past with Sheila. Their second kiss was slower and more deliberate. There was no interruption this time. With a mutual understanding that they were stepping over a boundary that neither of them could simply go back, they made their way to the bedroom. The ensuing night was intense, bordering on frenzied, as two individuals attempted to fill the gaps left by previous partners. The truth of what they had done then descended upon them like a second sheet as they lay side by side in the dark. "Now what will happen?" Carter inquired. Steffy gazed up at the ceiling. "I'm not sure. Perhaps nothing. Perhaps everything." Daphne was not as certain in Paris as she had stated. She had time to reflect because of the distance, and reflection had returned her to the starting point. She recalled their initial exchanges, Steffy's cautious advice on how to approach Carter, the nuanced,